don't assume that it won't happen to you. And we're not saying can't, but that it won't. I went from being a farmer's wife, very comfortable lifestyle, and divorced. And what I've noticed is that, talking to even friends who kind of middle-class friends, is that often it's the divorce. If you're divorced and you've got small children that you've got to look after. Because I'd gone from having working on community projects, which were short-term but well paid, to having to, that's when I ended up working in schools, massive in the wage I've been getting. And that was the very first when I kind of hit the first step of actually ending up where I ended up last year. So that was the first thing. I then had a period where I had problems with my back. So I had a problem of not being able to work. That kind of made things quite tricky for me, but I managed. And that's where I managed until last year, and that's where things really went totally. I had more problems with my back. I had problems with post-traumatic stress. My son had died after a 4-year fight against leukemia. So, and that, although I seemed to deal with it at the time, I actually then had post-traumatic stress, which affected me being able to work. I had to give up one job, working in a school. I tried doing. I started a job working in a shop, which I thought would be something that I would be able to cope with at the time, struggling with the depression and the anxiety. And it didn't work out. The issues with my back got worse, and I wasn't able to work. And it was then that things really went wrong, because the minute I wasn't able to work, I'd lived in my flat for 3 years. The minute I couldn't work, hadn't got a job, my landlord decided, I'm not saying that it was deliberate, but just at that time, my landlord decided that they were going to sell the flat. I was very naive, and I kind of assumed that because I was going to be homeless, that they would find me a place. I found out it's nowhere. You start at Band D is the bottom, and everyone starts at Band D, which means that although they encourage you to apply for positions, for houses, you're just not going to actually get them. I was house sharing with a landlord, and let's just say that didn't turn out very well at all. And it's part of the reason. Part of the problem is that the people who are being landlords really, the one thing I can say, that he should never have been a landlord, and that's part of the issue, that the system has allowed people to be landlords who really shouldn't, have got no idea about the responsibilities that they have as someone renting out a room. During this time, things were going very, very wrong with that situation. It got to a point where he had cameras in the house, so he was watching what I was doing. He and that's not just my paranoia. I actually had photos. I found the one in the kitchen because I wondered why he knew what was happening, what I was saying and doing when he was at work. And I found out that he did have cameras all over the place. Anyway, it came once I was in the house. I'd paid a month's rent. I'd paid him a good deposit. I'd actually paid him as much for a room as I had been paying for my whole flat before. But, it was last resort. I couldn't do anything else. During this time, the depression and the anxiety, the post-traumatic stress really got intense. And during this time, I did actually attempt to take my life, to end it all, because I really didn't see. I was completely trapped. It's you suddenly completely fall off the edge of a cliff, and I couldn't see how I was going to get out of it. I was obviously admitted to hospital and was extremely lucky to come out of that. But because at this stage I was homeless. The guy had kicked me out of the house. He'd gone into my room, thrown some of my personal belongings down the stairs, and made sure that I knew that he had actually got a gun. So I had a police escort out of the place. He held on to all my furniture. In the end, friends had to negotiate me. I mean, obviously it's only a couple of bits that were in the room, but I was just if you actually asked me how I felt at that time, I really just completely and utterly not there. It was as though I never felt that having a home. I never knew how much. I've moved several times since my divorce, and I hadn't understood just how much having a home actually means, and how much it's connected to your identity, and what happens to your identity when you haven't got when you haven't got that home, and it's kind of heart. It feels like you've lost your heart.